When I was in college, our course for extra credit in theology was dialogue. That means truth is ever changing. It's in process. Just like God is, just like everything else is. So friends, where's absolute truth? It's not there. There's no such thing as absolute truth. Friends, our culture isn't changing itself. The church gave up its stand, and we set a standard that they are all falling into now. They're following us. We're going to be judged first. Our concept of God is wrong. And it's not being balanced today, okay? This is the reverse thinking that has to happen. Here's the last quote, I think, from that process theologian, the one that's trying to introduce it. Matter of fact, he names in here the number one process theologian is a United Methodist. And his John Cobb. He opens up quoting the second generation major process theologian, Charles Harshorne, 1897-2000, summarizing this book, Man's Vision of God, published in 1964, God is Love, as we heard. Messel's first sentence reads, process theology is the name for an effort to make sense in the modern world of the basic Christian faith that God is love. Go to the next one. Messel calls process theologians the same name that Nazarene theologians have been calling themselves since Wynkoop's book. They call themselves, for 40 years, process relational theists. That's what they call themselves. Thus, the love message has been the historical access of heresy into the doctrinal teaching of some Nazarene theologians. You know what it opens up to? Universalism. Everybody's going to be saved. God is love. This is him speaking, this theologian. That is, God is the unique subject whose love is the foundation of all reality. God is a supremely related one. Friends, you are in sin, he's saying, and yet you're related to God. We are inevitably in relationship to him because we're completing his essence. You are not sinful and separate from God. You're born in this world in grace. That's what they're teaching. That's a heresy. And everybody sharing the experience of every creature and being experienced by every creature. God is just the functioning power behind all of us and everything. We are all then entwined in him, and we're just going to go back up into his being when it all ends. We're just emanations off of God. That's old Gnostic heresy. Okay? The next one. Or back one, actually. The next line there on the previous slide, 17. Disparages God's wrath. Here he says it. But while sheer wrathful power may force my obedience, it's always negative. It cannot win my loving worship. See, love's always put in contradiction to wrath. God is with us in our moments of greatest guilt and despair, yet God's love for us never wavers. Keep going. God is not the only eternal one. This is him. God is co-eternal with the world. The world's eternal. There's always been a world of some sort in which God has been creatively active. God did not create the world alone, save or sanctify us, or perform miracles. Everything has us involved. There are no separate events, he says, in our world at which we can point and say, God alone did that. Go ahead. Taylor stated way back in 1983, this is another warning we missed. Relational theology. You want to go around stressing the love of God and his relationship, do it in a right concept. Do it balanced with the idea of wrath as well. There is a relationship, okay? But to say that's all he is and we're inevitably related, watch out for this kind of terminology sneaking its way into what you're reading, sneaking its way into what you're presenting. Relational theology became aberrant, so there's a wrong type of it. When its advocates are people holding its position and press upon it the categories and concepts of process theology. This results in a failure to see that right relationships can only be accomplished by real subjective changes in the nature of the relator. In other words, you're not in relationship to God if you're sinful. He's got to change you so that you can be in relationship to him. That's called the new birth, by the way. You need by grace through faith. And then not only that, but you're not going to just be holy by your own efforts either. You need his grace even furthermore to take you to that higher place in your Christian life. If the relationist replies that disharmonious relationships do not result, here's where he takes away sin in big words. Result from sinfulness, but constitute the sinfulness. He's saying all that sin is a relational problem. Well, again, that puts you back on cheapening the idea. It's only a conscious decision. Because all I need then is to be justified. I'm in relationship. Then what? Sanctification is just a process. You see, it's not yes or no only. It's you got a bent. Even after you say yes to God and get saved, you still want to do what's wrong. And that's why you need that second work of grace. I think we're done. The ultimate word that they tied us into when we start thinking like they want us to think, Taylor argues a man is born upright. That if we're saying that, then we're taking Pelagius' stand, a heretic, 3:15 to 4:18. Here's Collins. He says, part of the problem with some contemporary assessments of Wesley's doctrine of regeneration is that Methodist leaders' understanding of the degrees of the work of grace is refashioned, with the result that regeneration is linked at its minimum, not with the new birth as it should be, but with prevenient grace. I had a professor stand up in front of me at our university and say, Ben, because God is for you, you're okay. Friends, if God's vote is all we need, and not our own vote to get saved as well, you see, this is a problem. But he was saying, because God is superintending this world, and he has prevenient grace, which means he's reaching out to you before you even care about him, therefore you're saved. That's universalism. That's baloney. He wants everybody to be saved, but just because he's drawing you doesn't mean that you are saved. He's not going to run you over and pull you into a relationship to him, whether you like it or not, and we're just inevitably glued and just give it up. Give up hoping that you're ever going to need a Savior. You're already there. All right? So that's the problem. Why don't we close it?